Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3851 and today's date is March 2nd, 2026, and the title of the episode is Central Bank Will Try to Use Iran, Trump Set the Stage for Oil, Tariff Options in Focus. Central banks cause inflation, and that is a threat to you, your savings account, your retirement. Ask yourself an honest question. Does your dollar go as far as it did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year? So what does the next decade look like for you and your savings? If your portfolio lacks exposure to gold, one of history's most reliable economic hedges, it's time to rethink your strategy. Gold has kept up with inflation and in many periods outpaced it. My friends at Noble Gold Investment specialize in helping people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. Whether you're rolling over an IRA or making a direct purchase, their team walks you through the entire process and makes it very simple. No pressure, just education and experience. Right now, all new qualified accounts will receive a free 1/10 of an ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Visit X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com and discover how easy it is to protect your financial future. Or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum. You can see they are now panicking because what is Trump doing? He's dismantling everything the deep state, the central bankers have put into place, one step at a time. And you can see every step of the way they're going to try to use this against him. Now, of course, already since Trump went into Iran, he's removing the terrorist regime and actually freeing the world. The central bank is going to say, whoa, wait a minute. We won't be able to do a rate cut because of what's happening out in Iran. And it looks like the oil supplies might be drying up because of Iran. And yes, they're going to use all this. But you have to remember, Iran's oil supplies, that's about 4.5% of the entire world where they supply oil. Plus, with the sanctions, they're pretty much selling oil to China and Europe. And when you really look at it, who are they really strangling right now? Does it really make that much sense? It makes more sense that China's going to be in trouble compared to the United States. But again, the deep state, the central bankers, they're going to try to use this to explain why they can't do certain things. And again, this is going to completely and utterly fail because what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see that Iran is going to be set free from the terrorist regime. And everything is about to change. Remember, this is not about just stopping one country or another. This is about dismantling the entire deep state central bank system that they've created. And once all this is done and they don't have the weapons to fight back, where do you think Trump is going to turn his attention? He's going to turn his attention directly at the Federal Reserve because, once again, if you don't have protection, if you don't have the ability to stop President Trump from going after the Federal Reserve, well, there's nothing you can do about it. And think about it. If you had the mafia protecting, the money and everything that they do, and you have their soldiers out front protecting it all, is it very difficult to take it down? Absolutely. But when you remove the soldiers and you basically remove the protection of all of it, can you go after the mafia? Absolutely. This is what Trump is doing. He's going after the central bank mafia system, removing the protection. The other protection, of course, is Congress. And can he just remove Congress? No. This is why he's setting everything up for the midterms. And again, this all has to do with the economy. Because think about it. The United States is going in a completely different direction than the rest of the world. The rest of the world is completely and utterly falling apart as they move towards the Green New Scam, the Great Reset, and everything else. Yes, there are certain states within this country that are trying to follow the central bank agenda. Of course, when you look at California, you can see that very, very clearly. You can also see it very, very clearly when you look at Canada. Canada, and yes, Germany. Canada's a complete and utter mess. And you can see home prices are skyrocketing. Canada's living standards, they're completely and utterly collapsing. It is a complete and utter disaster. And they're going in the complete and utter opposite direction. Wall Street Maverick put this out and said, Canada's living standards are collapsing in a socialist doom loop. The government is trying to hide this by growing the economy with massive numbers of immigrants. However, cramming millions of Bangladeshis into Toronto doesn't make for a more powerful first world city. It just turns the entire city into the third world also. Now they are all on welfare and the rent is higher for everyone. Canada's GDP per capita was 94% of America in 1981. Today it's 67%, the widest gap since World War II. Ontario is now poorer than 43 U.S. states, including Louisiana and Alabama. This isn't a hiccup, it's a collapse. From 2017 to 2014, U.S. productivity grew to 10.1%. Canada's fell to 0.6%. The U.S. spends 3.4% of GDP on R&D. Canada spends 1.7%. Housing prices are 50% to 100% higher in Canada compared to the U.S. Meanwhile, incomes are 30% lower. Canadians spend 48% of their income on mortgages. The average American, 34%. Canada has talent, natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, hydro, safe geography, rule of law. It should be one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. What it doesn't have is a system that rewards being successful. It is a system being strangled by a bad immigration policy, bad trade policies, massive regulation, woke DEI, mind viruses, and crushing taxes. And think about it. If you go back to the time of Biden and Kamala, what did we see then? The same exact thing was happening until Trump came along and turned everything around. And now you could see the difference. And when you look at the graph, you could see Canada's living standards, it is declining. America's living standards are starting to increase. And you could see it's moving completely in the opposite directions. And this is what's happening in California. This is what's happening in Germany. Any country or state that follows the central bank, the Green New Scam, the Great Reset agenda, this is what's going to happen. And you could see it's a complete and utter nightmare. And now what's happening with Iran, you could see European gas prices, they're soaring 50% after Qatar shuts world's largest LNG export plants. Zero Hedge says, here we go again. Europe among most exposed to Hormuz, and Goldman warning of a massive 130% upside risk for European TTF gas prices, potentially hitting €74 if LNG flows are blocked. And again, this is what happens when you are dependent on other countries. This is why Trump in this country said, you know something? We have tons of oil under our feet, tons of liquid gold. We need to access that. We need to be self-sufficient because, again, if you're dependent on Russia, if you're dependent on any of these other countries, and there is war, this is a major, major problem. But think about it. Most of Iran's oil goes to China. Most of Venezuela's oil goes to China. Now, Trump, he basically, central banks cause inflation, and that is a threat to you, your savings account, your retirement. Ask yourself an honest question. Does your dollar go as far as it did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year? So what does the next decade look like for you and your savings? If your portfolio lacks exposure to gold, one of history's most reliable economic hedges, it's time to rethink your strategy. Gold has kept up with inflation and in many periods outpaced it. My friends at Noble Gold Investment specialize in helping people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. Whether you're rolling over an IRA or making a direct purchase, their team walks you through the entire process and makes it very simple. No pressure, just education and experience. Right now, all new qualified accounts will receive a free 1/10 of an ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Visit X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com and discover how easy it is to protect your financial future. Or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Took over Venezuela, removed Maduro, and now the new administration in Venezuela is working with President Trump. Now Venezuela is shipping oil to the U.S. Did Trump do this before he went into Iran? Absolutely. Peter Sayong put this out and said 90% of Iran's oil was going to China. 70% of Venezuela's oil was going to China. China is now facing a 2 million barrel hole, and the world is on notice. The petrodollar does not forgive. Wall Street Maverick says the Iran strikes just ended China's river of cheap sanctioned oil. Together with Venezuela, it cut off nearly 20% of China's oil, and it showed the rest of the world what ultimately backs the U.S. dollar. And you could see everything now is changing. And you could see that Trump now has the leverage. And he's undoing everything the deep state, the central bankers have done. Remember, their entire mission was to shift everything to China. Their entire mission was to bring this country to a third world status and eventually remove the Constitution, remove the central bank, and shift everything over to another country. Trump has stopped all of this, and now he's reversing everything that they've been doing, and he's setting it up where he can go after the central bank. He's going to give himself as much leverage as possible to make sure there's no problem going after the central bank when all's said and done. And think about it. When you remove the terror, when you remove the leverage of the deep state players, and you remove their ability to strike at you if you go after the central bank, does this give him the leverage? Absolutely it does. But you can see here in this country, Gavin Newsom's trying to make a case right now that, hey, look, you know what? Oil was and gas was very cheap in California until Trump decided to bomb Iran. So Newsom, he could not resist a cheap shot against Trump following the bombing of Iran, and it promptly blew up in their faces. Following the bombing, Newsom's team slammed Trump for rattling oil markets while bragging about California's supposedly declining gasoline prices. Average gas prices in California have stayed below $5 for nearly 2 years. Trump's new war is already rattling the markets. We're watching this space closely. And this is what Newsom put out. But the U.S. Oil and Gas Association was not pleased by the tweet and decided to school Newsom's team. After calling the staffer responsible for the tweet a pajama boy, the organization shared a brutal fact. California imports roughly 5/8 of its oil from abroad, despite sitting on an almost 2 billion barrels of reserves. The U.S. Oil and Gas Association went on to detail each country from which the Golden State imports its oils. Of course, the reason California imports so much petroleum is that the politicians who run the state are worthless climate alarmists who would rather see rolling blackouts than drill for another drop of oil. And basically, they showed everyone where all the oil is coming from. Iraq, 21%. Brazil, 20%. Guyana, 16%. Ecuador, 14%. Colombia, 6%. Canada, 4%. Mexico, 4%. United Arab Emirates, 2%. Others, like Saudi Arabia, will total the rest of the 100% foreign share. The only state worried about rattling foreign markets is California because you have let yourselves become dependent on foreign supplies. Absolutely. And think about it. Why do you think the fuel prices went down across this entire country? Remember, California didn't reduce their oil prices, their gas prices. Trump did this. And yes, you're going to see the gas prices come down in California. But again, since they're dependent on other countries, you're going to see fuel prices go up in that state, and many of the other states, they're going to stay very, very low. And think about it. There's a lot of states that are much, much lower than $5 a gallon. There are states that are paying $2.90, $2.70, $2.40. Some states even $1.90. So I wouldn't be bragging about this whatsoever. And I think now everyone can see the truth of the matter. And as time goes on, people are going to see a separation. And they're already seeing a separation. You see a very big separation between the blue states and the red states. It's becoming clearer and clearer every single day. And you can see every step of the way, what are the deep state, what are the central bankers trying to do? They're trying to stop Trump with everything that he's doing. Because again, he's building a parallel economic system to compete against the central bank system. You see, without the income system, there's no way you can get rid of the central bank system. Just use common sense here. Let's say Trump didn't start the parallel economic system bringing income, and we only depended on the central bank. How do you get rid of the central bank? If you get rid of the central bank and you're no longer borrowing, how do you fund anything? You cannot. This is why the central bank fears Trump's tariff system so much. This is why foreign entities fear Trump's tariff system so much, because that is an income producer. That's the only thing that will compete against the central bank system. And you could see you have to continually bring in income to actually keep everything operational. Now, do we have to bring enough income to support the government that we have today? No, we don't. The government that we have today was created by the borrowing machine. Trump now is cutting down the amount of employees and agencies and everything else in government because, again, we don't need all these people in there to keep the criminal syndicate operational. Remember, they made it so big, so this way they could continually borrow more and more and more, and they need more and more people to actually funnel the money through the NGOs, shell companies, and whatnot. So do we need that with the new system? Absolutely not. And you can see every step of the way, what is the deep state players doing? They're trying to stop this. And you can see that, and Kyle Cheney put this out, the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals has rejected the Trump administration's bid to slow down the effective date of the Supreme Court's tariff rule. The admin has asked for a 90-day delay. The circuit issued it immediately. So, yes, Trump and his team, what are they going to do? They're going to try to stop the ruling of the Supreme Court. Of course they are. So what can Trump do? Well, he does have options that he can use right now. One of the first options, of course, is to just pay it back. Now, I don't think he really wants to do this, so he could also delay. So he could try to delay the payout process. The administration could file a petition for rehearing or reconsideration with the Supreme Court, which Trump already mentioned. So he might be looking to do this. He could also push Congress to pass laws retroactively authorizing similar tariffs, limiting refunds, or providing new authority for trade measures. For instance, Senate Democrats have introduced the Tariff Refund Act of 2026 to mandate refunds with interest, but the administration could lobby for counter legislation with a potentially divided Congress. This could be challenged, but offers a non-judicial workaround. Now, could Trump delay paying this back long enough to get the Congress that he needs, which means, yes, we would have to win the House and the Senate. Is he setting everything up to win the House or the Senate? Absolutely. This is part of the plan. Could he then have Congress, who are now, where Congress is run by patriots, not run by the D's, not run by the rhinos, could he have Congress now create a law that counters the Supreme Court? Of course he can. He could use other statutes for new tariffs. He's already done with this with Section 122, or issue executive orders to mitigate economic impacts, such as subsidies for affected industries. The administration could also challenge refund claims individually if they believe certain importers don't qualify, prolonging the resolution case by case. So again, he does have options. He can do exactly what the deep state players are doing, delaying, delay until you get the Congress that you need. Because if you really think about this, to remove the Federal Reserve, to free us from the deep state, the central bankers, and to put the economy on the correct course, which is not the Green New Scam, which is not the Great Reset, which is not the central bank, we definitely need control of the House and Senate. Because again, if we do not have control of the House and Senate, how do you remove the Federal Reserve Act? How do you remove the central bank system? How do you have Congress vote to audit the Federal Reserve? You can't do any of these things. So yes, the next part of the plan relies on the fact that we need to get control of the House and Senate. And this is why Trump is putting everything into place to make sure that we have a fighting chance to compete against the cheating system that they already have in place. Because again, if the D's, let's use this for example, if they get control of the House and not the Senate, well, nothing gets done, does it? If the D's have both, well, everything's already done. They're going to impeach Trump. They're going to keep the system that we have today, and nothing changes. So everything depends on the midterms. This is the next part of the plan to remove the central bank system and to take his tariff system to the next level. Yes, he built the foundation. He has the money coming in, but now he needs this to be built upon to destroy the central bank system. And that is where all this is heading right now. And think about it. Once we win the House and the Senate, what do you think is going to happen with Bitcoin? What do you think is going to happen with gold? What do you think is going to happen to silver? Because once again, when people start to realize the direction that he's heading in, and he's heading directly towards the central bank to take them out, and everyone's starting to realize that we're going to be going back to gold and silver, sound money, going back to the Constitution, what do you think is going to happen to precious metals? Well, I do believe they're going to skyrocket, and I think Trump is going to use this as additional leverage to remove the central bank and put a lot of pressure on them and actually show the people that, listen, we can go back to the Constitution, we can go back to sound money, which means your buying power is going to come back rapidly, especially when Trump pays off the debt of this country, which I do believe he will do. And I do believe he'll be using the stable coins, cryptocurrency, the basket of cryptocurrencies to take this to the next level. And I do believe that's where this is all headed. And again, this is all part of the plan. This is all about removing the source of the problem, and that is the central bank system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.